LSU's first ever national basketball championship, star player Angel Reese is defending her actions on the hardwood.
Reese is getting criticism for taunting during the game, all while she is calling out the First Lady of the United States. Andres Fuentes is live with the details.
Now, getting an invite to the White House after winning a championship has really only been if you've won a championship. But now First Lady Jill Biden says that she wants to extend the invite to the LSU Tigers after winning the basketball national championship and also the team that they beat in that game. The First Lady said that she wants both teams to come to the White House to really showcase how far women's sports have come since Title IX. And now this has led to LSU's Angel Reese responding to the First Lady on Twitter, calling the idea, quote, a joke. And now Congressman Troy Carter has also jumped in defense of the Tigers. In his statement, he says that he knows the First Lady meant no harm with her comments, but her remark was an unintentional slight to the basketball team. He says that he's respectfully requesting the Louisiana champions enjoy the White House invite alone. Now, this is all happening as Reese is getting a lot of criticism for taunting Iowa star player Caitlin Clark during the game. She waved her hand in front of her face and pointed to her ring finger in a reference to the championship ring that she and her teammates will receive. Clark did the same exact hand-waving gesture in her Elite Eight game against Louisville, and now Reese called out the double standard and says that she's really just focused on basketball.
I don't care about anybody else and what they have to say about me. That's the difference between me and a lot of people. I don't. And the biggest goal for me is a national champion. I don't care to be All-American. I don't care to be a defensive player of the year. The biggest goal is to be a national champion.
Now, many of Reese's teammates have come in defense of her, including a lot of professional and collegiate athletes and even some former LSU athletes as well. They really just want to celebrate everything that Reese and her team has accomplished this year. Many fans are also taking to social media and saying that, taunting like this is nothing new in sports, especially in a championship level game like that was on Sunday. So they're expecting to see a lot more of this style of play with these two great players if they do match up next season, since both Caitlin Clark will be returning to Iowa and Angel Reese will be returning to LSU. But for now, I'm putting it live. Andres Fuentes, Fox 8, Local First.